The next speaker is Martin Hergouth. He's an assistant researcher at the Department of Philosophy at Faculty of Arts, the University of Ljubljana. He finished a PhD dissertation titled Politics Between the Subject and the Ordinary, a Hegelian analysis of contemporary political thinking. In his research, he extends insights drawn from classical German philosophy to topics of political philosophy, philosophy of mind, and artificial intelligence. Martin, please.
Thank you, Atijn. Now, first, some preliminary remarks. Well, the position of organizer and of presenter at the same time is not necessarily synergetic. On one hand, because of there's limited time and there's competition for both roles, between both roles, and the other is also one feels more responsibility for the coherence of the conference, and I also, due to the circumstances, have prior access to the old talks, and so the way it worked out is that I also noticed that what I did have prepared was it would be an understatement to say that it was that there was just common ground with some other presentations. In fact, my best ideas were very similar to those that, on the one hand, we heard just now from Cecile, and also very similar to what Atij presented this morning. So I would say it was almost the same point. So I improvised and adjusted a little. So I opened up my presentation a bit to include some threads that of the debates that opened up in the last 2 days, and also, you will see some. I will indicate what are open points and unresolved or points open for discussion. The central problem of my paper that I set out to solve is relatively straightforward. So it's relatively often noted that there are, in fact, two arguments that Hegel articulates against Kant's idea of perpetual peace in philosophy of right. One is, we could say, causal argument from realpolitik, that the perpetual peace simply cannot be guaranteed in the way Kant envisaged it. That's most explicitly present, I think, in 333 paragraph. And the other is that the perpetual peace is not truly ethically desirable state of affairs. That is, we've been listening about this right now, that the peace includes an inherent dynamic of disintegration of the state and ossification of life, and the war, on the contrary, if it is successful, brings about political integration and rejuvenation. This is the subject of paragraph 324. The departure point from the problem of my talk is this, the initial problem. These two arguments, if taken by themselves as they stand, appear separated, appear distinct, and as such, it seems at first sight as the relation is one of contingency, of coincidence. And this would obviously imply something very bizarre. We would then have to conclude with Hegel that this is actually a happy coincidence, a fortunate happenstance of history, that peace cannot, in fact, be guaranteed. And this is weird. This sounds odd, so I start out actually from recognition that this cannot be an adequate rendering of Hegel's position. Not only is ethically odd position to take, but it looks wrong at the conceptual level, because fortunate things shouldn't be left to coincidence if we are Hegelians. So it seems obvious enough to me that it should be possible to construct a logical connection between these two arguments, the ethical and the causal one. So one would expect that they are somehow derived from one another. But how exactly and in which direction, which argument here has priority, and in what sense, Hegel does not say so explicitly and clearly, and therefore it is something that we have to reconstruct. And I think this will offer, if nothing else, and some nice insight in the structure of Hegelian thought, and also some new perspective from which to judge or evaluate his criticism of Kant in general. to start with ethical argument. Well, I have all the relevant paragraphs here. Well, let's stop here. This is the clearest expression of what I call ethical argument. Is the paragraph that that was the focus of Cecile's lecture. I will not read again. So the ethical health of people is preserved in their indifference. The stagnation of the blowing of the wind preserves the sea from the stagnation. So the war prevents the stagnation of the peoples. The part that is in italics. One thing to note here, the first comment I would have, that Hegel here cites himself, and this is not this is quite unusual, I think, because he rarely does it, and on the other hand, he quite often repeats himself without citation, also repeats his own positions without citation. So I don't know how I interpret it. I mean, maybe it implies that he's really fond of that formulation, he really likes it, or that he implies some distancing. But in a way, it could be both, because I think it's quite symptomatic of philosophy of right that it has some weird, ambiguous relation to the early Jena period from which this paragraph is from natural law essay, in the sense that there's obviously a development of overcoming of Hegel's position from that period, but also some kind of nostalgic return. I'm referring here. I mean, this is evidenced in the role of Sittlichkeit, the role of Sittlichkeit has in philosophy of right. Sittlichkeit was, of course, the defining feature of Hegel's thought, the defining notion of Hegel's thought in early Jena years, particularly in the natural law essay. So Sittlichkeit is there, the thesis of original sociality or original insufficiency of individual, which Hegel adopted basically as his better standard against more individualistic philosophies of Kant and Fichte. But then following this, a significant revision of Hegel's political philosophy took place during late Jena period, just before phenomenology, when Hegel came to realize or accept that this Greek-based ideal of Sittlichkeit, this notion of ideal ethical community, that this is not a sustainable model for conceptualizing modern society. So he acknowledged that the dissolution of beautiful life of antiquity is irreversible and necessary. The defining feature of modernity, according to Hegel, is precisely the inclusion of principle of individuality, which exists with some degree of independence from, or at least distance from, universality. And there's a precise moment when Hegel admits it's a last Jena system, 1805-6, just before phenomenology. And this was also the moment where Geist supplanted the notion of Sittlichkeit as this chief notion of his political thought. So in philosophy of right, I would say that this becomes sort of a central tension. The concept of Sittlichkeit returns, but in a new form. It's now it's loosened up, and supposedly it includes the space for the individual. But I think there's strong emphasis towards, there's really strong presence of early Jena points. There's strong presence of early Jena emphasis in the structure of philosophy of right, as if, Cecile was also talking about this duality, this ambiguity. My position is that it's just, it's not necessarily satisfactorily resolved in my view. So that both thoughts are present. Hegel says that it's synthesized, but in fact, the immediate conception of Sittlichkeit, it appears strong in philosophy of right. And the treatment of war is a good example of that, I think, because precisely the war is the appearance, is the moment where the modern individualistic dissolution of ethical light into particularities is reversed. So, and the universality becomes immediate again. And the one point where we see how this is, why I would say that this is not resolved in philosophy of right, is the next paragraph, paragraph 325, which I find really unsatisfactory. He recognizes that the war is universal duty, and then without argument he passes to recognition of necessity of professional armies, which means that there is a particular class that this universal duty is taken up by some particularly body of society. Okay, so much for the ambiguities of ethical argument. Now, what I want to focus on is the actual focus of my talk is the connection of two arguments, and the closest expression of where Hegel, the most articulate expression of the connection between the ethical argument and what I called causal argument is here. In the sentence that's immediately the next sentence. So the ethical justification of war, or the ethical benefit of war, is said to be only a philosophical idea, or, to use another common expression, a justification of providence, and it is maintained that actual wars require some other justification. The way I understand it, some other justification is causal argument for war. This is the one that's most present in this, in 333. So this is an idea not why the perpetual peace is bad, but why it doesn't work, because there is no universal authority over and above, no praetor, no judge, and the wills of the individual state remain particular, must remain particular, and therefore there is always a danger of them finding themselves in an irresolvable conflict. So this, here I think Hegel does this, articulates a certain connection between the ethical argument for war and causal argument for war. And now I admit this is something that I just didn't solve because I stumbled upon this thread too late. But I find the expression justification of providence he uses here, well, there's a lot to unpack, to put it mildly, because this is obviously a reference to Kant, to perpetual peace, but I didn't make a good story. I mean, obviously it is obvious why Hegel would admit that someone could describe his argument as justification of providence. So it is a fortunate providence in the sense that it is fortunate that wars have to happen because they serve ethical purpose, providence in that sense. But Kantian providence is something way weirder, the idea that we have to imagine nature leading to a perpetual peace. So there is some irony in there, but I'm not even sure whether Hegel is the one who wins this battle. So to sum up, I would say that if we consider let's say the order of two arguments in development of Hegel's thought, or what is his main concern, I would say yes, the ethical argument is more important for him. And so the ethical benefit of war is sort of prior to the causal necessity of war. Let's say I would put it more basic, on a more basic level of Hegelian thought. But let's say that we would want some more materialistic Hegel that would recognize the causal argument for war is kind of prior to the ethical benefit of war. So let's see how we can reconcile this. So causal argument again is this is the argument then that the peace, the perpetual peace, cannot be guaranteed simply because if we try to solve it in Kantian matter as a federation of states, the federation implies the wills, the individual, the sovereign wills remain particular, and therefore, if they remain distinct and particular, there is no guarantee of their coinciding at any given point in time. They might find themselves in a conflict, and therefore war might ensue. I think that in essence, Hegel, this is in essence just the observation. I think it's nothing else than the Hobbesian observation that there is a state of nature at level of international politics, international relations. There exists a state of nature between the states, and as long as you don't have any sovereign, then you cannot ensure that there will be peace. So the causal argument for the war bases on the observation, basically, that violence unfortunately is a solution. And maybe it's not a good solution, but it is a political option that is always available to the state, and there is nothing that no force that can prevent it. And that no matter what we do, we cannot prevent the situation degenerating to the point that we end up in a war. So, in that sense, the causal argument for war is Hegel's causal argument for war is very. It's built on entire logical premises, let's say, or it's purely a development of logical notion of independence and particularity. And from that, we can derive that actual formula of Hegelian affirmation of war. At some point, the descriptions of Hegelian affirmation of war slide towards the claim that Hegel claims that war is necessary, but this is a bit misleading, a bit imprecise. Should we say that war is necessary? And I wouldn't even say inevitable. I think the best way to characterize it, Hegel's modality of war, is that the modality of Hegelian war is that it is impossible to be made impossible. Impossibility of impossibility, or what is the same thing, the necessity of contingency. War is the name of necessity of contingency. If you remember Quentin Mayasso's book from early 2000s, with the same title, there was an argument there that was supposedly very much directed against Hegel about the necessity of contingency, but I think it's really strictly the same. It has really strictly the same structure as Hegelian argument for the war. So there is always a basic level of necessity that logically cannot be done away with. Contingent things necessarily happen and unhappen, and war is the name of this logical of this modality. What is by nature contingent is subject to contingencies, and this fate is therefore itself a necessity. This is Hegel, not Mayasso. What I get? Why is this important? Well, the crucial thing I attempted to solve in this paper is to build a connection, and perhaps this is quite obvious, but it's precisely this modality that constitutes the actual bridge between two arguments, is the link that connects the causal to the ethical side of Hegel's criticism of Kant's notion of perpetual peace. As we see, this quote is actually from 324 paragraph, so it leads to ethical argument. It's not about this. It's already so we can see how it constitutes a bridge. There is an ontological infrastructure behind Hegel's argument about the invigorating ethical aspects of war. Hegel's ethical argument can be translated into an argument of, let's say, ontological disclosure. So there is certain ontological truth of things that appears in times of war. The ontological fakeness, the inauthenticity of peace for Hegel is that the hierarchical causal structure of the system gets occluded in peacetime. In peacetime, it appears as if our life worlds consist of things that exist by themselves, by their own inertia. It is only in war that the immediate existence, when their immediate existence is threatened by the sabers or cries of the hussars, as Hegel adds somewhere, only then the true, let's say, the true structure of things appears. The finite things persist only as subordinated by the grace of infinite, of subjectivity embodied in the state. So I guess I'm starting to conclude, and I have an alternative formulation of status of war in Hegel as the one Cecile just presented. I wouldn't say absolute spirit, but I would compare it to the idea. Again, let's return to this unassuming sentence that I took as a focus of my presentation. So the one that the underlined one. This, however, is said to be only a philosophical idea. Again, there are some layers of irony and in Hegel's expression here, but I would say that this is not coincidence. I think the war actually have some deep connection to the idea, because idea with Hegel is the unity of concept of an objectivity or subjectivity and objectivity. And while war is there for not quite it's not immediately an idea, but I would say that the war, especially the destructive war, kind of displays the movement of idea in reverse. That is objectivity, whose negative relation to subjectivity appears out in the open. Okay, I think it's cleaner to conclude here. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we can open up the floor for questions. Anyone? No. Okay, so I'll start with a question. There are very many interesting things, but I'd like to focus on what was already in the title, that modality of war. You relate the idea of an impossibility of impossibility to necessary contingents, and also to the manifestation of the idea of the. Now I'm wondering if you take this all the way through, do all manifestations of ideas possess this unique modality, or is this somehow particular to war, or is fleshed out in an irony with Kant?
Yeah, good question. I don't know it. Yeah, I would say, yeah, probably yes, but or maybe I would say that wherever this appears, there could be some warlike structure recognized. I don't know. I haven't thought about others. So manifestations. Yeah, I mean, the problem is that one problem is that manifestation of idea can mean many things, and in a sense, just the movement of idea is manifestation itself, or could be termed as such. Maybe that's not a usual Hegelian way to put it, but the idea, of course, the negativity that idea includes. So I would say that just that war let's say, destructive war. My formula I would remain with this formula. Destructive war structurally describes idea in reverse. That's the and if they I would have to think about the answer to the question.
So in the abstract, you introduced this with the idea of actuality. So you could think of the manifestation of an idea as something of its actualization or its institutionalization. And so do you think of actualization, this would be somewhat metaphorical, but as being warlike in this sense? This is, I guess, maybe a different way of posing this question.
Yeah, okay. See, yeah, no, it's maybe it's more like again, no, it's in reverse. But no, okay, actually, I'm trying to feel what did you mean to have to all the best manifestations of an idea having the same modality.
Maybe we can have another question. Can dere ta disse stoppe?
Thank you. I have you here both. So I will return to my previous question that I already posed to you, Abdel. Namely, you spoke about impossibility of impossibility, of the necessity of contingency, and that's related to the fact that there is still always possibility that a real possibility of war, and that again presupposes the plurality of states. Since we are in the realm of finitude, then everything that could happen, in a sense, must happen given enough time. That basically means that with a plurality of the state, there is always the possibility of war, and if there is no impossibility of impossibility of war. That can be deduced directly from the plurality of the states and the fact that still there forms of finite objective spirit. But then the question that I already posed is this a logical necessity or a factual necessity? If the plurality of states is a logical necessity, then we have this causal explanation that I would say stands by itself. But we need another layer of argument that asks, that somehow demonstrates or somehow argues for the essential plurality of the states. So intuitively, one could say, expect that Kant could well live with universal monarchy, but intuitively, one would say that that would be against Hegel's, let's say, deep convictions. But why? What are the logical arguments for that?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have tried it, but I wonder myself. I mean, I thought I did notice that I cannot really reconstruct what would Hegel's argument be for, and that this link is missing. So I wondered, and I think he doesn't really have it. I mean, I would think that it's something like I mean, maybe it would be something like a repetition of, in the same sense that self-consciousness are necessarily plural. Probably you could repeat this same argument for the states. I think that would go, but yeah, I'm not. Yeah, it's perhaps it's. I mean, I do not think that Hegel proves it, or that we can prove it. That I can prove the logical necessity of plurality of the states. At least not. So yeah, I would say that I do not have that argument. I agree, but I would say that the well, yeah, sounds. Well, I'm not. I do not have. I know how it would go. It's something like that. The well, that any individuality needs to constitute itself with that externality, so in opposition to some other individuality, and it will just make no sense to um, to have a single world government. The closest that Hegel comes here is when he says that whenever there is a coalition of states, is a coalition against another coalition, so there cannot be a total unity of sovereign wills, something like that. This is.
It seems to me that Korea was saying abstract universality. So in Hegelian terms, it's so the writer says can express concrete universality, and that's why logically, but rocks is just seek for us. So I don't.
Yeah, it probably is an answer. I do not understand it completely, but that's the Hegelese that I'm not comfortable of expressing. But
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so maybe I'll add another one to finish off. I want to go back to the providence. I was hoping to push you to maybe at least improvise an interpretation of where this puts Hegel and Kant together, because he seems to be definitely ironizing the use of this, but essentially using it for the opposite purpose, right? So instead of providence clearing out war, it's securing its presence in the world, which seems to be really an unhappy phase. So why do you think it has providence?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of. I mean. What bothers me most here is that Kant's use of providence is obviously much more. Well, it's just more. It seems to be more intricate, more more complex, more subtle intellectual strategies. A very interesting topic too, because it's. I mean, it's. I don't know. I mean, it is similar to some other Kantian moments a bit, but I think it's weirder because, at least for me, okay, I'm not an expert in Kant, but that argument connects providence, which is some sort of postulate, I guess, but with the nature in a really unexpected way. So I really don't know. I would really have to think about what is there. And yes, maybe Hegel does not take this into account, and it's actually a very stupid this. So that he just inverts it. It's possible to. But he's just saying that this might seem as an warmongerish, warlike providence, but some might call it that. It has that structure, but I'm not actually doing this. And
but it does seem to be providence in the same sense that, as you pointed out, it's connecting a causal necessity with an ethical kind of necessity.
Yes. Yeah. But the difference is that, this is the part that I left out because that for Hegel, this is then just the structure, again, the structure of the idea. So how that it's how it with Hegel generally the telos and the mechanical cause and the relation gets inverted, let's say, in Hegel, or it's at least symmetrical. So the general Hegelian point would be that providence, so teleology, is really nothing. It's mystical only. The unfolding of the history is itself teleological, and as we adopt that point, there is providences in history, and you don't need I mean, you need God, but God in an immanent sense for that, and not the providence is not to be taught in the sense that there is some plan that God is checking that things go in the right direction. It's just that in the totality, in the grand scheme of things, the mechanism that leads to the goal and the goal are always in that, like, this mutually constituting connection. So this would be Hegelian. This would be how Hegel would adopt the notion of providence, and in that sense, this is what I try to explain, and I think the modality of necessity of contingency is the crucial part, because we have there the let's say the immediate, the ethical and the causal argument are immediately the same in the modality of necessity of contingency. So
Yes, do that. I think if there are no more questions, we can finish up. Okay, please.
Yeah, thank you. This is super interesting. So I'm wondering about the metaphor. So with the stagnation, because then as I take it in Kant, perpetual peace is peace through law. Peace through law. So like leaving the state of nature leads to a different conflict solution, because then you have a legal structure in place. And that's the same as I read it in perpetual peace. So that you have a legal structure in place that leads to a different conflict solution. So it's not that there would be no conflict anymore, but that the solution would not take place via war.
yeah.
So, and insofar, it would be unfair to use this metaphor and talk about stagnation, but still, in a way, I can understand why this metaphor is used, because then, so in the best sense, once the legal structure is in place, then it's not gonna be changed. Yeah.
Yes, I think Hegel's point is that things appear differently for individuals, and so the benefit of war is really that the individuals get the acute awareness of the conflict. So that's why even if the conflict is resolved in a with the international law, I mean, you can live your own private life on. You don't know what the drama has been going on in the courts, and this will not happen. So the stagnation will, the solution of the state in the particular will continue. So that's why there will not be this ethical invigoration in that case. That I think is true, but it's not obvious that this is the only way to reach it, and if it's truly necessary even.
Can I just add? So it has been remembered yesterday, but also Kant in the third critic, we read that the manner of think of our people conductive war is sublime. The more dangerous it was exposed to and was able to stand up to it with courage. By contrast, a long peace tends to make the mass spirit of trade dominant, and with it self-interest cover this unbreakness. So it was also, this metaphor was a very common place in the culture of
I agree. Yeah, yes. I know. In the end, I wouldn't even make a conclusion that actually, yes. If I would go on to evaluate Hegel's relation to Kant, the research I did is actually, well, it does not. I mean, I found some things to be said in favor of Kant, mostly that the essay of Perpetual Peace, specifically in the sense that paradoxically, I mean, Hegel's position might have more ontological, historical truth to it, but let's say that it's actually Kantian essay, Kant's essay that is more politically engaged, and so it actually in real political manner just clever. So I'm not really very decided Hegelian here.
Okay, did I have a question? No? Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So thank you, Martin, very much. I am sort of thank you. And